All right, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank our guests at the back, the journalism students from Tsinghua University. Welcome. I hope you have a good and informative time here at the UN. All right, and with that, let's get started. Good afternoon. The Secretary General arrived in Davos, Switzerland earlier today to attend the World Economic Forum. In his meetings there, he will reiterate his call for a fair globalization that benefits those who need the most. Inequality is rising, and economic growth is not reaching those who need it most, he will stress. The focus of his participation will be the keynote address he will deliver tomorrow, entitled An Integrated Response to a Disintegrating Global Order. You can watch the address on the UN webcast page as well as other platforms. Today, the Secretary General had a series of bilateral meetings, including with President Petro Poroshenko of Ukraine, Prime Minister Charles Michel of Belgium, the chair of Alibaba, Jack Ma, and Klaus Schwab, the CEO of the World Economic Forum. This morning, the Secretary General's Special Representative and head of the UN Verification Mission in Colombia, Carlos Ruiz Massieu, briefed Security Council members for the first time. He told them that last week's car bombing on a police academy is a reminder of the urgent need to end the violence and persevere in efforts to ensure peace. Across Colombia, marches were held which demonstrated a broad consensus around the rejection of violence. This consensus must be nurtured, he stressed. Mr. Massieu said that in his discussions with government officials, FARC leaders, and civil society, he has seen a strong commitment to the peace process and a desire of former combatants to work and find their place in society. The challenge, however, is to accelerate reintegration efforts and to define the status of the 24 territorial areas where thousands of former FARC-EP members live. This, he said, will require the participation of local governments and the private sector. Mr. Massieu also warned of the recent wave of killings of social leaders and said he has called on the government to ensure it has a broad presence to prevent more of these incidents from happening. He also called on council members to continue supporting Colombia as it consolidates peace. And we expect Carlos Holmes Trujillo, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Colombia, and Emilio Archila, High Presidential Post-Conflict Counselor, to brief reporters at the Security Council stakeout following the Security Council's briefing on Colombia. That should end fairly shortly, so they might be coming out within this half hour. Martin Griffiths, the Special Envoy for Yemen, and Patrick Kammert, the chair of the Redeployment Coordination Committee, have started their discussions with the political leadership of both parties regarding the RCC chair's suggestions for a proposal on the redeployment of forces, as agreed in Stockholm. These suggestions are to be discussed by the RCC representatives of both parties when that body holds its next joint meeting. Mr. Griffiths and General Kammert are in Riyadh today to meet Government of Yemen officials. On the Central African Republic, the UN mission there, MINUSCA, reports that it is continuing its operations in Bambari in Ouaga Prefecture. The mission said it has established new checkpoints and resumed patrolling in Muslim neighborhoods, in addition to conducting robust day and night patrols in the other areas of the town. The mission has also been engaging with the local community to sensitize them on the objectives of the operation, which are to protect them against armed groups, dismantle barricades and posts erected by the Union for Peace in the Central African Republic, and to ensure that Bambari is a city without armed groups and weapons. To the west, in Mambere Kade Prefecture, the mission has intensified patrols and reinforced its peacekeeping force presence in Karno and Zauro-Sango villages, that's north of the town of Berberati, following a series of confrontations between armed herders and suspected Ante-Balaka members. Just to flag that the Secretary General's Special Representative for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohammed Ibn Chambas, is currently undertaking a pre-electoral mission in Nigeria. This is part of the UN's sustained efforts to support the consolidation of democracy and good governance in Nigeria, in line with the UN Secretary General's focus on conflict prevention. Mr. Chambas, in coordination with the UN country team in Nigeria and in close collaboration with the National Peace Committee, the Independent National Electoral Commission, and the National Human Rights Commission, will participate in statewide confidence-building fora in Benue State, Kaduna State, Kano State, and Rivers State. During his mission, Mr. Chambas will also meet with Nigerian stakeholders to ensure that necessary measures are being taken by the entities involved in the organization of the elections to reinforce the cooperation towards a successful violence-free, inclusive, credible, and transparent outcome in 2019. Our colleagues at UNICEF are stressing the need for children to be protected following reports that children were reportedly killed and injured in ongoing turmoil that broke out last month in Sudan. In recent months, as Sudan has witnessed an unprecedented hike in the cost of living and shortages in bread and fuel, poverty among children and their families has increased, forcing some families to keep their children out of school. According to reports received by UNICEF, more children also now require health and nutrition care. UNICEF calls on the authorities in Sudan to prioritize the protection of children and safeguard their rights to education and health in accordance with the Convention on the Rights of the Child. I want to flag that this morning, the president of the Economic and Social Council, Inga Rhonda King, convened an informal briefing on getting to know the ECOSOC system in the SDG era. During the briefing, the president shared a vision for the council's work during the year. She called on member states to strengthen ECOSOC and harness the energy and enthusiasm of the high-level political forum to promote sustainable development. She said, "It is imperative that the high-level political forum summit in September is successful in meeting the high expectations around it and gives renewed momentum to achieving the sustainable development goals. Our political declaration should focus on global solidarity and address key critical areas where collective actions are needed." In Singapore, representatives from more than 40 countries are meeting at the Forum of Ministers of Environment Authorities of Asia and the Pacific, which is held under the auspices of the UN Environment Programme. The forum brings together governments, businesses, civil society, and UN agencies who will discuss environmental issues in the world's fastest-growing region and identify key priorities and solutions. More information on the forum is available on UNEP's website. And after I'm done, you'll hear from Monica Grayley. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., here in this room, there will be a briefing sponsored by the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations on the launch of the World Refugee Council's latest report outlining concrete actions to protect the interests of the forcibly displaced, as well as the countries and local communities that host them. Then at 12:30 p.m., there will be a briefing sponsored by the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization on the occasion of the International Day of Education, in recognition of the role of education for peace and sustainable development. That's it from me. Do you have any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you, Farhan. I have a question on Venezuela. Currently, thousands of people have taken off to the streets to protest against Nicolás Maduro and asking for a change in the country. This has been massive response to this call for protests, and so far we are already seeing some reports of repression from Nicolás Maduro's forces against those who are voicing their concerns and those who want to change the country. So I wonder if there is any special message from the SGE and if they are following the situation, and basically because this is a special or very sensitive moment for Venezuelans right now.
Well, yes, we are following the developments closely. It's clear that, as we've been saying before, we want all of the various groups on the ground to lower tensions and pursue every effort to prevent an escalation. As you're aware, the UN firmly rejects any kind of political violence, and we will continue to underline the urgent need for all relevant actors to commit to inclusive and credible political negotiations to address the challenges facing the country with full respect for the rule of law and human rights. Yes, Stefano.
Yes, there's been this weekend that there have been a tragedy in the Mediterranean again, and we saw that the UNHCR and the IOM, they commented, that they released comments, but at least me, I didn't see any message from the Secretary General. Now, I know that the Secretary General, at the same time, when there are those kind of tragedy, like the one recently in Mexico, release a message, something to underline the tragedy. In this case, I didn't see anything, but it was because I missed it, or...
Well, no, it's simply a case where what the Secretary General believes is that he stands by the views and the work of the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and the International Organization for Migration. And he believes that the points that they made about and the concerns that they have expressed need to be addressed.
Just a quick follow-up. because those agencies all the time, of course, they are very aware of those disasters, these tragedies, they all intervene. Sometimes just to see something coming directly from the Secretary General underlined the situation. And so it was, we do this job, journalists, we spread the news. Sometimes it looks like strange when there is not the kind of underline.
Well, the Secretary General has made clear his views about the needs to deal with the situation of refugees and migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. He's expressed it repeatedly, and as you know, he even talked to you in the press just last Friday to talk about his various concerns, and has repeatedly emphasized the need to make sure that their lives and their safety is put first and foremost on the agenda of the governments of the region. Yes, Nabil.
Thanks, Farhan. Can you give us some information about Mr. Griffith and Mr. Kamert's schedule, the meetings in Riyadh, and what's next? What's the next city or country they're visiting in their talks?
As I mentioned, they are meeting with officials of the government of Yemen while they are in Riyadh, and the purpose of that is to invigorate the process in terms of the withdrawal of forces. Prior to arriving in Riyadh, Mr. Griffiths was in Oman, where he met with some of the leaders of Ansar Allah. Yes.
Please. So after the incident, the shooting incident on Mr. Kamert's car or convoy, is he planning to move the venue to a different place, or the next meetings will also be held in the same venue in Hodeidah? Is there any other places or countries maybe where they can meet in a secure place or a better venue?
We'll see what arrangements can be made. We do not at present have an announcement to make on the next joint meeting of the Redeployment Coordination Committee. But when we do, we'll let you know both the time and the venue. Yes, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. The Secretary General is in his press conference prioritized multilateralism and peace and security for New Year's. And he also described Iran as an important and constructive country in the region. But as you know, a meeting has been scheduled to take place in Poland, which Russia says is an anti-Iran gathering and has deteriorated and has a bad impact on the peace and security in the region. What's the Secretary General's position or reaction of this meeting?
As far as I'm aware, the agenda of this proposed meeting is still being worked out. So we'll have to see what the final agenda is of that. Of course, regarding Iran, our basic position, including on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action as an important diplomatic achievement that needs to be preserved, is as you know, part of the record. And with that, Monica, the floor is yours.